Hello and welcome. As you can see, the example here is not as this example I showed in the last video where we activated the example. And that is because month has gone between now and then. And I've made significant changes to how I'm going to lay this out for you. I want you to use ChatGPT for this or similar LLMs. So large language models in ChatGPT right now, they're big. Doesn't really matter. It could be any other. In the future, these things are just going to grow. How are people really using them? Students are using them very much incorrectly because they're thinking of them as some kind of replacement for knowledge, or thinking of them as someone replacing of their future jobs. And to a degree, that is correct, but it's not going to replace their employments. They're going to replace a lot of administration between these things, so they're going to get more room to do more things. It's like people back in the days where you had the industrialization. Actually, the whole industrialization provided more jobs, more interesting jobs, because you didn't have to spend your time taking one of those lids and then screw it on, and then go to the next jar and screw it on. And that was your job. You was putting on lids on jars every day. The human brain is not meant to do those simple tasks forever. So I thank the industrialization for providing us with a solution to that weird situation we humans have put ourselves in. And then internet came about, and that was going to change everything. And then AI comes about, and everything gets changed. Of course it does. But what are we humans supposed to do with these changes? Well, there will be some kind of wall, some kind of new area where people are needed. And the more people work on these things, the faster it will go. And that is how we always push these barriers. So don't get afraid of it. It's just going to change what we do. So that was a side note, I admit, and it's not part of this video. And you can choose to believe what I say or not believe what I say. I'm not a prophet or anything like that. This is what I believe. I firmly believe this. But that aside, I think we should talk about how you as students should use ChatGPT. Well, or other LLMs, of course. What you should do is that you should consider the value of it by looking at the kind of questions you put forth. And it's really, this is the hard thing, how to put a good question. I'm not talking about prompt engineering, because prompt engineering, which is the field of prompting and asking questions, and there have a lot of technical values regarding how the LLMs work with NLP to create tokens, and therefore how they read text and what you really ask for. So prompt engineering is a wonderful thing. And there's like a lot of, things going in there with prompt engineering that I didn't mention here, but they are not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about more simple things. Like if you look at the text to the left here, you see the example, and there are a lot of things that could mess things up for you. For example, I want you to see, for example, this section as if it were its own site, as if this whole thing had nothing to do with the rest. And that is why I actually use, for example, I use an H1 in here. You see, the example starts here, not out here. This is the section. The example starts here, and H1 over here. So it's like the nav. It's the main start of everything, right? And this one up here, it's an H1 plus for the whole page. But in reality, we rarely, if ever, use two H1 on the same page. That is confusing. So if I just took all of this and pasted it to ChatGPT and asked, is this structure correct? It would probably point out that there is like, this is a weird thing going on here. And they would say, I deduce that this is some kind of practice, and so on and so forth. And all of that is things you already know or should know. And that's okay. And it might be correct, it might be wrong in its assessment. But we didn't really provide it with a good question. And I just let me take another example. Let me take all of this and I paste it in. and it reads it, and what you're going to ask it is like, describe this HTML for me. Well, it's going to tell you what's there and what seems to be the purpose of it. And it's really going to talk about the elements and the structure in a very generic sense. The value of it to you, almost none. Because that was not what you were really asking about. What you're really asking about are things you learn, how these structures are functioning together, and what's the purpose of having this one there and not there, and so on. So you didn't learn anything from it because you put out an, in this sense, in this regard, in this course, a worthless question. What you should maybe have done is to discuss the structures in this one. If you ask about the semantic structures and or the nesting or something like that, you could ask ChatGPT, for example, to evaluate and give other examples for how you could put out the same content using other structures, other semantics, and evaluate with what they say, what each of them would say if the structure and the semantics changed. What would be the sentiment behind it? That's a valuable question, because then you get thinking, I can use this kind of knowledge when I'm deducing which one to use. And the same thing goes with accessibility. What could you do to improve accessibility with this structure? It could just really say that, but it could also, you can improve it and say, which part of this is good accessibility, which part is bad accessibility, and which part of the mediocre accessibility could be improved, and please motivate why. Well, that's a wonderful question. You learn stuff from it. So when should you start doing these things? Right now is my idea. I really want you to say, I've learned most of the other things before that. I'm going to try to learn the example I see in front of me. And then I'm going to use ChatGPT to help me make a good example of this one. This example is going to be a good example, and I'm going to bring that example over to the exercise and take that exercise into discussion with my teacher. And that teacher will be me or one of my colleagues. And when we get into these discussions, we are going to actually work together, you, me, ChatGPT or the like, and together to solve why maybe ChatGPT give you an erroneous answer, maybe give you a version of an answer, but it was not fully completed according to me. You could add stuff to it, or why I was in some ways I could have done an improvement myself. Me as a teacher, I learn all the time. I assess, I try to improve, but every time I seem to stumble into the new things, saying, "Oh well, you could have done this better." That is just part of evolving together with technology. So what I really want you to do is go through all of the things you've done previously. If you haven't already done that, you should have done that. When you're done with that, you start with this example. So I want to clarify, I don't want you to do that again. But if you haven't followed along and done the code in the other parts of this lesson, you should do that before going into this exercise. And then you step into this exercise, and then you take up a key, and you turn it in ChatGPT or turn it in Sonar, Anthropic, Claude, or Perplexity, or whatever you want. And then you start to work with these tools and trying to assess which tools are working with me in the best sense, and what kind of response do I get? How do I get these responses in a way that I want them? How do I assess whether I put a good question or not? And then you make this site, this example site, starting from here. Everything below here is the example site. Start from line 100, I think, to this one. And you make it look good. You design it. You take the HTML into you know, the the level where you want to change semantics and all of that, you do that. But you gotta know why you do that. The structure, you could change it as well. Doesn't really matter. What you really want to do first is understand how the CSS is working with the current structure before you do that. So you should go to student.css, look into this example, and try to deduce what are these things, custom properties and calcs and relative color values and so on and so forth. What's the purpose? How does it work? And how would you deduce what to do in how they function? Well, you use ChatGPT for that as well. And then you try with what ChatGPT taught you, and you try to access it, and then you don't get it to function, and then you ask ChatGPT, why didn't this function? As I thought it would. I thought it would do this, but it did this instead. That's a good question, because you had a prior belief that something would happen because you did something and something else happened, or nothing happened. Then ChatGPT will tell you, this is where you did your error. But you have to provide it with where you're coming from. And to do that, you gotta have a purpose of actually building something so you can try it out, assess whether it works, and take the next step and learn from it. If you do this, I promise you would have an extra teacher in this course. Not only me, you will have ChatGPT, and whether I'm better or worse than ChatGPT in this case, well, I don't care. I want you to actually get the things that are in the course so you can become good at it, because that's the purpose of the course. I am not the purpose. You are. I want you to feel you've learned something valuable for your life when you get out of this course, and for your, the employment you seem to envision. So please do that. I've put a lot of stuff into here to get through, a lot of CSS nesting, relative color values, as I said, custom properties, calculations inside the custom properties. I change things around. I sometimes put grid column like this, otherwise I put them like this. And what is this upgrade, and how do you work with it? I mean, all of that, there's like a purpose for it. It does not only teach you new stuff. It doesn't only make you ask, get to ask really proper and valuable questions. It also prepares you for the project, because parts in the project are going to really, really, walk on the sidelines of things I've done here, and you will feel there's like a certain recognition between this and the project. Doing this will improve your chances of performing well when doing the project. I think I've been very clear on what I want you to do. I hope you feel that it's clear that you should use ChatGPT or any other LLM, your choice, and use it to really understand how to put out questions and make a good design out of this example, and take it with you to the exercise, where we in that exercise, I will try to, help you get where you want, help you with questions you've gotten while doing this exercise. And that is the very purpose of the exercise at the end of the week. Thank you very, very much. I'm looking forward to seeing you on the exercise.